Welcome back to another episode of the Clean Sweep Podcast, which is powered by JMD Janitorial. I am your host, IJUST McIntosh. In this episode, we're going to discuss turning complaints into customer delights.
Gotta stay on point, baby. One, two, three.
Imagine receiving a phone call and a complaint from a valued customer that their conference room wasn't clean the night before an important meeting. In this episode, I'm going to guide you through turning such challenges into customer delight. Let's lay down a strong foundation. Understanding the nature of complaints and the difference between complaints and customers just venting. So let me give you an example. There are like reoccurring events, and this occurs like if a cleaner consistently miss a specific area, like underneath the desk. They're not vacuuming underneath the desk. They're not wiping down the blinds or dusting the blinds, and there's a lot of dust buildup. So one way of first clarifying that is understanding the scope of work. A lot of times there is miscommunication between you and the customer expectations and what's actually listed in the contract and in the scope of work, what they're paying for. So you may dot all of your I's and cross all of your T's and go over every single detail of the scope of work. You'll often find later on down the line, as you get into that contract, that the customer may have paid for, as an example, only the microwaves being wiped down, the outside of them being wiped down 5 days a week. They may only pay for the microwave being wiped down inside 2 days a week. A better example is vacuuming. Initially, the customer may have paid for 3 days of wall to wall vacuuming and then 5 days of vacuuming down the aisle. That customer may come to you on a day where you're just supposed to vacuum down the aisle and then say that they're getting complaints from their employees that vacuuming is not taking place daily underneath their desk. You may have to go back and review that contract and the scope of work with the customer and remind the customer that they had only paid for wall to wall vacuuming 3 days a week, and that the other 2 days a week, they only paid for vacuuming down the aisle. I'm going to provide you with another example of how you can turn a customer complaint into a customer delight. And that's with your immediate response or your response time. For me, JMD Janitorial, we have a 24-hour response time. So the response to any complaint can be within that 24-hour period. I think that's relatively reasonable. Anything outside of that, then you're kind of leaving your customer high and dry. So they may complain because, for example, a water pipe may have bust inside of their location. They got the plumber to come through. Now you're scheduled to be at that account tonight, but they may want you to come in a little bit early in order for you to do a carpet extraction or to do additional cleanup. So when a customer reach out to you, it is important that if you can return the customer's call immediately, that's even better. But having that 24-hour response time is very, very critical.
Yeah, cost to be the boss, and I went broke hanging it. I done spent thousands on rule the world entertainment. Now it's back to the road to stack up them ends. Wasn't gone that long, I came back with a Benz.
Let's say, for example, after receiving a complaint about the cleaning smell being too strong or your cleaning solution is just way too strong, you're going to want to investigate and find out if your cleaning solution is not being properly diluted. So that's where you having quality control, you being the owner, you having inspectors, you having someone who deal with your cleaning solution at the different locations, check and see if the cleaning solution is properly diluted. That makes a big difference. To some customers, the cleaning solution can be a little bit obnoxious. It can be very strong. To some customers, they may complain to you and say, I don't smell it at all. You're going to get that ebb and flow. You're going to get some customers who want the cleaning solution to be strong. Then you're going to get some customers that are not going to want it to be strong. Even within that one office space, you may have one or two people may complain and say that the cleaning solution is just way too strong. And then they're complaining to the facility manager who brings it to your attention. So that's just something else to consider.
Me, homie, stay on point. One, two, three.
So I'm going to provide you with a fourth strategy. And how do you turn a customer complaint into a customer delight? Resolution and follow up. For a complaint about missed cleaning appointments, offer free cleaning sessions as a resolution, and calling a week later to ensure that they were satisfied can turn a negative experience into a positive one. So if you're scheduled to clean that account, I don't know, 3 days a week, and your employee got very, very ill, and you didn't find out until later on that night, there was no way that you were going to be able to find you a substitute, or you were going to go out there and be able to clean it yourself that night for whatever reason, then you're going to want to provide a resolution and a follow up to immediately to your customer and offer them a free cleaning. That's like kind of one of the best ways to turn things back around and have that customer feeling that you value their business. Now, let's talk about training staff on handling complaints. A lot of times, as you being the owner, the majority of the time, if you're not cleaning and hands on yourself, and you have employees that are doing the cleaning at these particular locations, then whether it's the contact person there or it's another employee, you have to set boundaries. And when your staff receive a complaint, not to take it personal that the person is attacking them and how they clean. It could just be a cleaning method. So, for example, you may have rags that leave lint, and your cleaner may spray the rag, wipe down the desk, but when the person or the employee of that office come in every morning, there's a lot of lint on their desk. That can become annoying to them. So they may bring it to their supervisor's attention, or when they see your cleaner, they may bring it to your cleaner's attention. And the last thing you want is for your cleaner to take that personal and to go back and forth with that employee, with that customer. Because regardless, if you're dealing with the facility manager and they represent company ABC, every employee of that company, practically in all practical terms, they're your customer. So they have a right to say something, but often they don't know the scope of work. They don't know that, you don't vacuum underneath the desk only more than 3 days out the week. They don't know that you only wipe inside of the microwaves 2 days a week. They don't know that you may only do the front glass, 4 days a week, as an example, or what have you. But often you'll find that employees who are nowhere near attached to the contract understand the scope of work. And often that customer, if they're a large building, are not conveying the scope of work to all of the employees. So you'll have different people will approach your staff and say, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And you have to train your staff to understand the scope of work. Even if that customer or an employee of that company, ABC, does not know the scope of work, your employees, it's imperative that they know the scope of work. And then they may have to explain in a respectful, polite manner that, hey, I get what you're saying. I'll take a look. If it looks really bad, then address it. But if not, you have to explain to that employee that I'll bring it up to my supervisor. They can speak with your facility manager, but I know that we only vacuum wall to wall, which includes underneath the desk, 3 days a week. And that's a good way for you to convey the scope of work to your employees. That's crucial because often, if you're the owner and you're not cleaning anymore and you're not at these locations on a day to day, they see your employees. So whether they leave a note, whether someone is working late, whether they have multiple shifts there, especially if it's an office like a calling center, they may have, multiple shifts there. So in that instance, they're going to approach your employee 9 times out of 10. And it's very important that your employees understand the scope of work, especially when it comes down to like, you know, um, restocking of the soap. They may think that you provide all of the supplies. In this case, it may be the customer supplies the toiletries, the hand soap. So they complain to you that there's no hand soap when you have already left and aware that there's no hand soap and left multiple messages for your customer that they need more hand soap. So those are just some things that you want to think about.
Me, homie, stay on point. One, two, three, four. Move easy. One.
Moving right along to another strategy, and this is implementing preventive measures. And let me give you an example. After several complaints about the same issue, such as dust buildup on the windowsill, maybe if that is included in the scope of work, perhaps you need to have a checklist for your employees. And it goes back to the previous point that I even just said, is that your employees and the cleaners, it is very important that they know the scope of work. They know when you're mopping, if it's only 3 days a week, what areas are you mopping? Do you, how, when you have like toiletries or toilet paper inside of the restroom and it's like a quarter roll left, they have to know that your customer wants it changed at a half a roll. If they're paying for the supplies, if they want to change that a half a roll, then change it at a half a roll. It's just that simple. But it still boils down to having a checklist specifically for the task to prevent future oversights. Now, to me, this is very important, and it's building a positive company culture around feedback. Celebrate stories in team meetings where an employee went above and beyond in resolving a complaint, reinforcing the value of proactive customer service. So that's important when you have those monthly meetings with your crew, whether that's four of you guys, whether you have 16 employees, whether you have two shifts, whether you have three shifts, whether you guys are there 24/7. It's important that once a month you get with your employees, you have meetings and you guys discuss housekeeping issues, and it's going to be about some complaints that you may have. um, I often found that when I changed the culture and stopped using complaints because people get offended, and your cleaners, by human nature, takes that personal, then it can affect their performance. So, me personally, I removed complaints and I substituted that with work orders. So, let me give you an example. Let's say there was a restroom that wasn't cleaned properly, and I bring this up with the employee, my employee. Often I won't say that I spoke with the customer and I received a complaint that the restroom was not properly cleaned last night. Often what I will say is I received a work order from the customer about the restroom not being properly cleaned. Psychologically, when you receive that information from the customer and you pass that information on to your employee, it's going to resonate with their psyche much better than a complaint. Human nature is going to cause that employee to take that complaint as a negative connotation and feel like they are personally being attacked. So, having a positive culture in the way that your company culture look at feedback from the customer, complaints, communication. Really, it's their way of communicating. And a complaint doesn't always have to have a negative connotation. You know, a complaint can have a positive connotation at the same time, but you just have to choose another word, another vernacular to explain the same situation. And at JMD Janitorial, I've chosen to use the word work order instead of using complaint. And I found out that it's highly effective. This message is sponsored and approved by JMD Janitorial. Another fact that I think is very, very important that I really want to highlight in this episode, specifically for new commercial cleaning business owners, because it can be very hectic when the customer is calling you. You're feeling like, you guys are not doing the right thing, but you have to understand the customer doesn't always understand the scope of work. Now, I'm just going to double back to scope of work because I think that's an important aspect to highlight and understand that a lot of your customers are not going to fully comprehend the scope of work. Although you guys have done a walkthrough, although you've pointed out every single aspect of what you guys are going to do as part of your services that you're providing to that customer, there is still always going to be that level of expectation that your customer is going to exceed beyond the boundaries of that scope of work. That's just the human nature of it. There's always a tug of war, a give and take. So be certain that is within the contract and you review it with the customer and your staff servicing any locations. This will eliminate miscommunication and put everyone on notice so the expectations are clear, cut, and dry. Now, there has been case studies and success stories within all of that. So it's not all doomy gloomy. I once read in a commercial cleaning magazine that a client once complained about the restroom cleanliness. And after addressing the issue promptly and following up, that commercial cleaning business owner not only retained that customer, but that customer also recommended their services to other businesses. So there are case studies and there are success stories. You just have to hang in there and just remember, be professional. You're providing a service. They retain your services and you have to value that relationship. You have to cultivate that relationship. You also have to draw the lines in the sand, because you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. You do a favor one day as far as cleaning, and then they'll think that that's what you're supposed to do every time that you get there. And it becomes a tug of war, a back and forth. And that's where great communication, constantly in contact with your customer. And when I say constantly, we're speaking about, once a month, whether that's a quick email, whether that's a survey, whether that's through your supervisor or through inspections.
Got a closet full of phone posits I can stick my feet in, but where the Gucci's or the Giuseppe's, the business meetings.
If you're new to the commercial cleaning industry, listen, it's not about the mistakes that you're going to make, but how you respond to them. By embracing complaints or work orders with an open mind, a willing heart, and a proactive approach, not only will you solve those issues, but you'll also pave the way for long-term loyalty and trust. And trust in this industry is as valuable as the services that we provide. Thank you for tuning in to the Clean Sweep podcast. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with other entrepreneurs and professionals in the cleaning industry. I am your host, IJUST McIntosh. Peace all and be victorious.
Gotta stay on point, baby. Huh? One, two.